initiate self-destruct sequencing.
Welcome, everybody, to My Mando and Me.
My Mando and Me.
This is a mini-series brought to you by This Is Going to Be Terrible, where we're three friends hanging out, talking about whatever seems interesting at the time, which happens to be The Mandalorian Season 2. If we haven't met before, hi, my name is Robert.
Hey, I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
For The Mandalorian Season 2 on Disney+, after each chapter airs, we will release a mini-review the following Sunday, all the way up until the finale. To start the mini-series off, Chapter 9 released this Friday, October 30th, 2020. James, care to tell us a little bit about the episode?
All right. Well, first, before we begin, we gotta destroy all those blast shields. From here on out, it's gonna be spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. We have Chapter 9, The Marshal. The Mandalorian is drawn to the Outer Rim in search of others of his kind. Written and directed by Jon Favreau.
So now that we've got the spoiler warning out of the way, we can go ahead and talk about what happens in this episode and share our thoughts. So we'll kind of go through this chronologically, sharing our thoughts along the way. And so the episode opens up with Mando arriving on a mysterious planet. Yes.
Before we even talk about the episode, I just want to put out there that I love the recap they did before the episode because it felt more like an advertisement than it did like an actual like summing up. So it's more like there's so much that happened in season 1. If you hadn't seen it, this is kind of what you missed, and you should go back and watch it real quick. So
yeah, the recap was great. So after the recap, we get right into it, and the Mando and the child land on a mysterious, very dark and seedy planet to meet with a underworld criminal type named
a gangster,
sure, named Gor Koresh, who runs a fighting ring on this mysterious planet. Apparently, Gor knows where to find Mandalorians. The Mando is trying to seek out other Mandalorians to help him on his quest to return the child to his kind. Now, this opening was pretty creepy, pretty scary. You land on a planet, you kind of see from the child's perspective. You see these creepy red eyes hiding in the background, which I initially thought were Jawas, and later on, spoiler alert, we cleared that, but they will see the kind of damage.
We never actually see the creatures. For all we know, it could have been some hungry Jawas.
Yes.
Ute me.
They did kind of the way they sound and everything did remind me of those creatures that Ezra tries to tame using the Force in Rebels. In a hangar in one episode, he's trying to keep them from hurting him and Kanan, and it kind of reminded me of them. But those creatures had yellow eyes, so most likely not the same creature here. But they did sound like and had that same kind of scariness, creepiness to them. There's a lot of graffiti on the walls here, and it looks like we have kind of some 3PO graffiti that at least looks very much like him. Maybe not actually 3PO, but who knows?
I mean, come on. 3PO is an Ewokian god, after all.
Word travels fast,
Word gets
right?
around.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
I could be mistaken. They're using a very primitive dialect, but I do believe they think I am some sort of god.
So we end up in this fight ring, and where there are two Gamorrean guards duking it out with look like vibro axes.
I just gotta say, the effects on the vibro axes were really, really nice.
yes,
In the first season, we saw a couple of vibro blades, and in all the years of reading Star Wars books and games and whatnot, I would always see descriptions of vibro type weapons, and yeah, we just never actually seen one on screen before, and it's really neat to finally see that.
and I'd always imagine them as just like basically like the turkey knives you can get that like do the whole slicing motion very quickly. So to see that it was not that at all for the vibro axes, the bigger weapons, I was just like, you know.
The turkey was not on the menu.
No.
Ham was.
Now that you say that, Nathan, I have one of those, and now every time I go to carve the ham, I'm going to imagine that I'm using a vibro blade on a Gamorrean guard. So thank you for that so much.
Do not go over to Robert's for the green turkey on Thanksgiving.
No, it's probably not safe to eat. So we get this underground fighting ring. The Mando meets with Gore and tells him that he needs his help locating Mandalorians because he's heard that he knows where to find them. The Gore offers to make a bet or a wager for his armor, and then we find out that Gore actually only knows where Mandalorians are because he's been hunting them down to collect their armor, and then essentially threatens
that
the
precious,
Mando.
precious Beskar.
And so threatens the Mando's life to get it back. And we get a very hilarious nope or I'm out moment from the child when he hits the button on the front of his cradle there and it closes up just before, what is that weapon called?
The whistling birds?
The whistling
What
birds.
is it?
Yeah. I think it is whistling birds, and uses them to great effect. And then we get what is just another great fight scene between the Mando and a bunch of random bad guys, and he basically completely owns them all. Not perfectly, which is always something I've loved about this show, is that the Mando isn't always perfect in how he fights. He does take his licks.
The Mando and the Randos.
But it ultimately just kicks butt, and it's great to watch. After the Mando is finished kicking butt, of course, Gore runs away like a coward. Mando chases him down, and we get, again, in the first chapter of a season, where the Mando grapples an enemy by the leg with his grappling hook and pulls him to submission. It ends slightly different than the first episode of the first season. He doesn't get cut in half, but he probably got chewed in half. Gore gives up the location of the Mandalorian that he is aware of, which is on Tatooine. And so the Mando makes an obviously bounty hunter promise by saying that he will not end his life with his own hands, and then shoots out the light and leaves Gore to be eaten by what James believes to be ravenous Jawas.
Hey, you can't tell me it's not until we see a body.
And we might not ever get one. Also, at the end of the episode, when the credits rolled, I was surprised to find out that this character, Gore Koresh, was voiced by John Leguizamo. It did not sound like him. There are one or two moments based on certain words he says or the inflections he uses in his speech that you can kind of tell it's him. Like there's just very slightly, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of sounds like him, but he did a very good job, changing up the voice so it didn't just sound like John Leguizamo in a alien suit. So, but I was pleased to find that out. And that's another callback to the first chapter of season 1, where the first alien character that we meet that speaks is a popular comedian, where in season 1, it was Horatio Sands. And now in this one, we get John Leguizamo. So that was a pretty neat little tie back to chapter 1, season 1.
Well, I imagine it's probably also because I believe Favreau and he have worked together before. So it was probably just a matter of calling up a buddy and being like, hey, you want to be in a Star Wars? Okay.
How come I never get calls like that from you guys? I want to be in a Star Wars. So we get the Mando traveling to Tatooine with the child, and we get to see the I forget her name. I didn't look it up, but the lady that runs the docking bay that the Mando lands in. And this is probably the funniest scene for me in the entire episode, because every line she delivers is just like gold. She's telling the pit droids to get away because remember, he doesn't like droids, but she's not aware that, poor IG-11 gave his life in service to the Mando. And now the Mando doesn't hate droids anymore. And we get a nice little funny, oh, he likes droids now moment, which is great. And then just everything after that, the pit droids do their typical funny physical humor gags. One of them gets a vacuum hose stuck to their nose, which I thought was cute and hilarious. And
Yeah, it is nice to see. I believe it's Amy Sedaris
Mhm.
playing the mechanic Pelimoto, or however it's pronounced. So it was cool to see her back again. I wasn't expecting that so soon. I don't think anybody was expecting to be back on Tatooine, of all places, this quickly. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, it was neat. She says the thing that we are all thinking when she's holding the child, where she's like, "How much do you want for him?" Just kidding, not really. All of us would love to have our own the child, little baby Yoda, for us to just stare at and cuddle and listen to him coo and do cute and cuddly little things and
I
maybe
mean,
force choke our enemies.
it was really distracting when Disney Plus put that little ad on in the background with the money sign next to it. I mean, come on, guys. Way to be subtle.
But speaking of staring at, did anybody else notice how like this puppet seemed to be way more animated than it was in season 1? In that I do not remember his eyes being able to look around like they did in this episode, this chapter rather.
I did see that
So
too.
kudos for them improving the puppet rather, and not just sticking with the same old and making it better.
Yeah. And we mentioned that in our season 1 review. We were saying like kudos to the puppeteers, because every time he's on screen, he just gets better and better and better. So yeah, it is cool that in season 2, they brought it up considerably. And not even like they had to. Like season 1 was great alone, and then they just made it even better. In the same scene, we find out that R5D4 is alive. He must have gotten his motivator repaired.
R5!
Uncle Owen,
Yeah?
this R2 unit has a bad motivator. Look.
I think in one of the behind the scenes gallery episodes, there might have been a quick mention, like he was as a background prop in the cantina scene back in season 1, the episode 5. So it's nice to see him here. I didn't really need him though, especially that sort of close-up shot of the backside of confirming like, hey, here's all this, scoring scarch marks. So it's definitely the same little R5 unit.
But I thought it was a neat little connection. We all kind of just forgotten about R5. And honestly, on the first watch,
Hey, nobody forgets Skippy the Jedi droid.
it's not canon anymore, James.
I'll load it in a cannon.
So it was still nice to get that kind of connection. People probably forgot about it. Honestly, on my first playthrough, I didn't even make the connection. She yells out R5, and I just, thought like, yeah, it's just another R unit that's R5. I didn't think it was R5D4 until my second or third playthrough. And then reading some other reviews online, I was like, wow, that's pretty darn cool. So she points out that the Mando needs to go to this town that's very remote, that nobody's been to in a long time, that's apparently been wiped off the map by bandits. And so that's where this Mandalorian that he is seeking is located. And so he gets the speeder bike that he had in that chapter in season 1, and then travels to this remote town. When we get there, we get
on the way we do see him kind of stop off with some Tusken Raiders again.
Oh yeah,
cool and relevant for later in the episode.
Yeah, let's not speed past that. That does it does.
I didn't want to speed past it because I love how they're portraying the Tuskens in this series as a whole. Because like every other piece of media, except for Knights of the Old Republic, it always seems like they're just savages and they're brutal and they're to be avoided or killed outright whenever you come across them. And then like we have these scenes where he's talking and negotiating and everything, and it's so cool to see them as like actual people and not just obstacles.
Yeah, it's great. So we get to learn more about the Tusken Raiders and about their culture for sure. He arrives in the town, and guys, we get another cantina.
I knew you were going to say that.
More cantinas, please. We get another cantina with a weak way. And that's pretty cool there that we get to see a little bit more of that species, especially in live action. I am dying for Hondo Ohnaka to show up. I'm hoping that, maybe we do bump into him or not. He is one of my favorite characters from the animated series. So it would be neat for him to show up.
It feels a little weird that we never, I don't think they ever gave this guy a name.
No,
Like for
because
all the interaction that we had with him in the episode.
this character that shows up, which we'll give you his name in just a minute, actually says, like, calls him Weequay, like by his species name. He doesn't even have a name for him. He's just like, hey, Weequay, give me a glass of whatever. So he arrives in this cantina, and there's this kind of this funny moment where he's like, I'm looking for a Mandalorian, and the bartender's like, can you tell me what it looks like? And he's like, it looks like me. Like, I'm a Mandalorian, so he looks like me. And the bartender points out that it is, what is the word he uses here? Marshal. That the town's marshal looks like him, and we get that nice little, he wasn't there.
Hence the episode title.
We get this, he wasn't there, he's there now thing, where the Mando looks over, and where the marshal was not standing at the door, he is standing at the door, and he is wearing Boba Fett's armor. I mean, we all kind of saw this coming with all the teases in the first season. That not all the teases, but the tease in the first season. We all kind of knew that something was going to happen, and if there was a Mando on Tatooine, it was probably going to be Boba. But we find out very quickly that it is not Boba Fett wearing the armor. And I don't want to miss one of the things here that's just the great storytelling that they do here that we've talked about, where the motion of Mando, the character, and how much of a story his motion, the way he moves, tells, where this person wearing Boba Fett's armor offers him to have a seat with him and have a drink. And when the Mando starts to walk towards him, and that character takes off the helmet. And the moment the helmet comes off, you see the Mando kind of like take a step back, like, whoa. Like, this is not a Mandalorian. This is some guy wearing Mandalorian armor. What the hell is going on? And you see the attitude change too, where like now he's like, basically, where'd you get that armor? And of course, this character who's revealed to be Cobb Vanth, who is a character from the Aftermath novels, that is in the novels. He is a sheriff of Freetown, which is essentially this same town that we're seeing here in this episode or this chapter, which the name is escaping me now. What is it called?
Mos Pelgo.
Mos Pelgo, which is probably the same town, Freetown, in the books. But he's got Boba Fett's armor, and he's been using it to keep the town safe. Points out that the Mando's probably not happy that he has the armor, and of course he isn't, and demands to get it back. And they have this really neat kind of tense moment, but not super tense, because you kind of know, like, he's not gonna, like, they're not gonna have a gunfight right here, right now. There's something, it's only like 5 minutes into the episode. Something else has got to happen, but they get interrupted by the ground shaking and some unknown force heading into town. And at first, when this thing came in, I'm thinking, is this some kind of Imperial Armada? Is it the Tusken Raiders? No, it can't be Tusken Raiders, because Mando was just with them a moment ago on his way there. Is this a sandstorm of some kind? And then we see that this thing is in the ground, and I'm wondering, what can this thing be? What did you guys think it was at first?
I thought maybe it was a larval form of a sarlacc, because I know they probably explained in the legacy versions how, like, the sarlaccs are immobile carnivores, and they get dropped like a pod wherever they land, and they just open themselves up to whatever tumbles in. I thought, well, maybe they're rewriting it so that, like, the larval form of these humongous sarlaccs are actually more mobile, and they can decide where they actually want to plant themselves. So that's what I was expecting it to be.
I don't know, honestly, but before seeing the thing slithering under the ground, I just thought it was maybe going to be bandits coming back from the mining people or whatever. But then we see in the ground, and it's like, well, I don't know, is this about a new Tatooine creature, some kind of giant snake or something, or worm? And then it turns out it's just a giant crate dragon, I guess. I don't know that I've seen a ton of it in the lore where they like hang out underground.
Mm-hmm.
That might be new, or maybe not. I don't know. There's a couple different kinds of crate dragons, and they vary in size. This one looks like it might be a greater crate dragon as opposed to a canyon one, which is considerably smaller.
Mm-hmm.
The canyon ones.
Yeah. I initially thought it was a crate dragon. I was like, there's no way that's a crate dragon. And then I was like Nathan, where I was trying to think of what else it could be. And I was like, well, maybe it is a sarlacc. But I was like, do sarlaccs really like move around like that? I feel like they kind of like either move slowly or they find a pit and then kind of stay there the entire time, that they don't actually leave that spot. But then we get this really neat or sad moment where there's just a bantam minding his own damn business, and the crate dragon pops out of the ground and swallows him whole. And so then we are shown that Cobb Vanth will offer the Mando his armor if he will help them rid the town of the crate dragon, because it is eating their livestock.
Which leads us to kind of getting a little flashback for Cobb Vanth, taking place right, who knows how long, right after the second Death Star destruction, but we see them, everybody in the town gathering in the cantina, watching it blow up, cheering. And then they only really get like 5 minutes of freedom before the mining corporations come in and take over. Cobb Vanth, skips out of Dodge, takes whatever resources as he can, gets stuck in the desert. Some Jawas come and help him. And that's where we find that, hey, the Jawas, in all their scavenging in the desert, have acquired Boba Fett's armor. And Cobb Vanth is like, mine, mine. And hey, so that's how he gets the armor. So we get a nice little flashback. It is weird because in the Aftermath novels, it's slightly different how he acquires it. He does get it from Jawas. They do scavenge around Jabba Hutt's destroyed sail barge and find it. But there's a whole nother bit where like Cobb has to like fight a mining person for it in getting it from the Jawas. So I'm not sure. This might just be a case of books, for better or for worse, have always been considered a second tier of canon, even in all the new stuff. So anything in live action can pretty much, take bits and pieces of whatever they want of it and override it. So this looks like that might be the case here too.
Maybe they wanted to go for this more guy down on his luck, gets lucky, because he even mentions that we get a nice little like luck kind of proverb quote thing where he says, I guess sometimes both suns shine on a womp rat's tail, which I loved. Like, I was like, Cobb Vanth grew up on Tatooine. So like that is totally something someone growing up on Tatooine would say, like grow up hearing or whatever, as a term of luck. So I thought that was great. So they maybe wanted to paint him a little differently there. Maybe they didn't want to introduce another character, but ultimately I don't think it matters. It's not something.
It was probably more of just a time issue. Like, even though this episode as is just under an hour, they still only got so much time to work with everything else going on.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that doesn't impact the books greatly anyway. Like, either version is fine. It's one of those, like, it's not like a butterfly effect where this one event changed so many other things or impacted so many other things that if the two of them don't completely line up, they still end up the same way with little to no effect on any other things. He still gets the armor. It's technically still from Jawas. Yeah.
Like I said, books have always been considered second tier for canon. Anything in live action or even the CGI animated series, usually if it happens there and it contradicts the books, they just go, hey, the series are the first line, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
I have a proposal.
What?
Cobb was lying in the flashback, and he actually did kill someone to get the armor, but he didn't want to come across as a complete, total, bad person to the guy who could kill him in half a second. And so he's like, oh yeah, I just had luck and I came across the armor because Jawa scavenged it. And that's going to be a plot point later on, assuming that all these characters reunite like they did in season 1. And then Mandalorian's going to have this moment of like, can I really trust Cobb? He stole armor from someone. He wore it when he's on a Mandalorian, and he may not actually be trustworthy.
Yeah, you do kind of get like this sense too, like the Mando keeps looking over at Cobb wearing the armor, and it's unsettling to him. He does. You do see as the episode progresses, he does get more and more comfortable with it. He still takes the armor in the end, but you can see that he's less and less disturbed.
He's looking over like, put your dang helmet on, boy.
So after we get our flashback, they go to find where the crate dragon hides or lives, so that they can kind of come up with a plan of action to take it out. They do meet up with some Tusken Raiders on the way there. We kind of get what I think is like almost like a parallel of the scene with the Mando and the Jawas and Queel, where the Mando was hostile towards the Jawas because he didn't really understand them. They took his ship and, took it to pieces and everything. And Queel's kind of like, look, man, we got to work together so that we can both get what we want. And we kind of get that same thing here where Cobb Vanth is very unsettled by being around the Tusken Raiders because they have raided their village and taken their livestock and killed friends before, but he's also killed them in return. More, and he even says more of them than they have killed of us. So, he's still very unsettled. And we get that whole Cobb Vanth is upset, threatens one of the Tusken Raiders, and then Mando's kind of like playing the role of Queel, where he's like, bro, take it easy. We have a common enemy here. We can't kill this thing alone. And so I kind of like that parallel there from that chapter in season 1. And so we go to another hilarious scene where we find the nest of the Krayt Dragon, and they try to lure it out with a bantha. And the poor Tusken Raider, trying to get out of the way, ends up actually getting eaten instead. And then the bantha just starts walking away like, oh, I guess I'm lucky, and then just leaves, which is pretty hilarious. And like the moment it shows itself, like, the Tusken Raider starts to run away, and you're just like, bro, I'm so sorry for you, but it's just too funny. We get them planning how they're going to take out the Krayt Dragon. There's some funny things there about they built like this little 2-scale model of the Krayt Dragon using some, I don't know, maybe if it was a baby Krayt Dragon, it kind of looks similar, right? The bone structure and stuff of this little skeleton they use. And these rocks.
I guess I just assumed it was maybe like bones of like a baby. What are their little dog things? The Skags or whatever?
Oh,
no,
yeah.
That might be Borderlands. I forgot what the Star Wars name of those little things are. The dogs that the Tuskens have.
Yeah, I did forget that. We do get a scene on their way there before they get to the Tusken Raider camp that we get these animals to show up that look a lot like Skags from Borderlands. And we learn that not only does the Mando know how to sign to the Tuskens, he can also speak their language, which is pretty interesting. So he's able to calm down these, we'll call them dogs for lack of a better word right now. He kind of calms them down. And then for the rest of the episode, except for maybe 1 or 2 occasions, he's actually speaking using his voice, their language, which I thought was pretty neat to hear someone other than a Tusken Raider use that language. It just shows you how much the Mando has spent learning about them. And again, it's just more of that showing how these are normal people and they speak just like we do. Going back, they're making their plan, and the Mando, realizing that they don't have enough between just the 2 of them and the Tusken Raiders, volunteers the village. And this is where this episode starts to feel a lot like chapter the Sanctuary,
chapter
4 and chapter 2 with the Mudhorn, because he's got this giant beast that he must defeat in order to get something. So he had to defeat the Mudhorn to get the Suga, the egg, for the Jawas to get his ship parks back. And now he has to defeat the Krayt Dragon so that he can get back this Mandalorian armor from Cobb Vanth. And then it's like Sanctuary, chapter 4, because he's got to now teach the village and use the village to help defeat this threat and then ultimately achieve his goal. So I thought that was pretty, again, these callbacks or connections back to the first season, I thought was pretty neat.
Well, not only that, but like setting up the village, the Freetown, whatever, working with the Tusken Raiders, it just continues the trend Mandalorian has of just being a really big homage to the old like Hollywood Westerns. In this case, you've got the Tusken Raiders being stand-ins for Native Americans, and the rest of the village just being old-timey cowboys or whatever. And it's like an old-time Hollywood Western. You've got the two groups meeting up and having to work together to overcome this greater force of nature, whether it be some sort of beast, in this case like a Krayt Dragon, or just the wilderness itself. So yeah, if you're into old-timey Westerns, here you go.
And they do strike a deal. They do strike a deal too, where the Tuscans agree that they will no longer attack the village or their livestock, but there's a clause: so long as one of them does not attack first. And this goes back to one of those things where, like, is this foreshadowing for something? Is this going to be something that brings Cobb Vanth back into Mando's view, where someone in the town screws up and then there's some kind of unrest again between these two groups? But again, speaking to the fact that the Tuscans are not just savages, like they are willing to make deals for the common good here. We're like, okay, you help us out. They're destroying our village and eating our livestock. It's destroying your village and eating your livestock. And we don't really get along, but you know what? Neither of us can do this alone. Let's work together and then agree to leave each other alone. And that way, at least the common threat has been defeated. It's just that the story throughout this episode is just great for humanizing what I think most people considered like a demonic or evil threat on Tatooine.
Yeah, they can work together. They can kill that great dragon, cut him up, have a nice old barbecue, bring Grief Cargo over. He'll make a nice stew. Gonna be real good.
Yeah. Baby Yoda can do the hand thing too. So we get after they not convince the village, but let the village know that they need to help out to defeat the Krayt Dragon, we get this kind of montage where they're preparing to blow the Krayt Dragon up, and they make sure it's sleeping. They set up some explosives, and you kind of get the sense that this is just like every other, it's a movie trope, right? Like, the plan is not going to work, right? And so they lure out the Krayt Dragon. They have these really cool giant crossbows. Where they got them, I don't know. Where they had the time to build them, I don't know. But, they've got them.
Wood.
Yeah. Where did they get the wood and all that rope? But you know what? It's fine. It's fine. It still looks cool. But they lure out the Krayt Dragon. They finally get him in position to blow him up. Of course, we get some of this tension where Cobb Vanth doesn't want to wait. He thinks it's not going to work and he wants to blow it up too soon, but Mando convinced him to wait, and they blow him up, but clearly it doesn't work. I don't think anybody watching this episode was convinced that it did, because that's just not good entertainment, honestly. You want to see it, the tension and the what's that word that it's escaping me right now? You want to see the stakes elevate and continue to elevate. So they definitely do that. It kind of retreats into the ground and then pops up at the top of this like mountain in front of above its like kind of nest area, and just starts spewing acid all over the place. I don't know if the acid is so corrosive that it kills them on contact. You do see them screaming in pain, but it doesn't. It's weird because it looks like the people disappear after they're spat on, but then maybe they don't. So I'm curious. And
from what I could tell, it looked like it basically, it dissolved. Curiously enough, only the Tuscans. We only ever see the Tuscan Raiders die from this. I'm not going to say that none of the villagers did, but I think it kind of goes back to any brutal fight scenes we had in season 1 usually involved the stormtroopers, because it's a lot easier to justify. You can go a little heavier on the violence if you don't have like a purely humanoid like face or body that it's being done to. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to dissolve somebody in acid, you don't want to see somebody's death face. You just want to see, oh, here's a Tusken Raider mask. Nobody will care.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
So we get some really cool kind of like team up flying rocket fight against the Krayt Dragon with Mando and Cobb Vanth, where they take off with their jetpacks after the Krayt Dragon and try to shoot him up close, but it's clearly not working. And Mando devises a plan where they head back down.
I do want to point out, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
You see the Mando using his disintegrator rifle that he used in like the 3rd episode from season 1 that was killing the people left and right, and it did nothing against this Krayt Dragon.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like, it didn't even, it looked like a peck on the cheek. It was just like a puff of smoke and like nothing happened at all. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, another thing real quick, going back to the acid stuff. As far as I can tell, I think this is new. I've never read anything about that before. The only closest thing that I could come up with is apparently crate dragons have a venom that's usually either in their bites, so in their teeth, or in some of their, like, their scales or tendrils or whatever, like on their backs. Usually you'd get affected by the poison that way. So this might just kind of be some sort of offshoot, like maybe it, I don't know, stores up some venom and it can go.
It's not great. I'm getting flashbacks to a scene in Jurassic Park where what is it, Ned, I think is his name in the movie, gets trapped inside of the Jeep with the dinosaur and it just spits in his face. Not pleasant. No, I'm getting nightmares. I might not be able to sleep tonight. So after the team up, they realize it's not working, and Mando devises a plan to take him out once and for all, using the remaining explosives and bantha again. Poor banthas, man. It's like they're bantha fodder, right? Bantha poodoo, unfortunately, man, as Watto would say. So, it's unfortunate how many banthas were lost in this episode. They could not put at the end, no banthas were harmed in the making of this film, because they sacrificed too many of them. But anyway, they strap some bombs to a bantha, and Mando's like, I've got a plan. And Cobb's like, well, what are we going to do? And he's like, I just need you to take care of the child, which again shows the trust that he's developed in Cobb because they're working together. And he sees that Cobb is doing this to help save his village. And he pulls a Han on Cobb. I don't know if Boba's jetpack is faulty, but I mean, all it takes is a little whack to the back of it to just send you flying off. And we get Cobb flying off after Mando whacks him in the back with the butt of his rifle. And
I'm just gonna assume Mando, having trained with the jetpack for probably a little while now, is familiar enough with any kind of its faults. So if he can use that to his advantage, he's going to use it.
And so I think one of the neat little things here too is the sound that the jetpack makes as it's flying off is the exact same sound that it makes in Return of the Jedi when it happens to Boba Fett. And I get that it's the same jetpack, so in theory it would make the same sound, but I've listened to these back to back and it's like cut out of Return of the Jedi and placed in Chapter 9 here, which I thought was a pretty neat little callback.
But wish me luck.
So with Cobb Vanth out of the way, Mando lures the crate dragon into swallowing him and the bantha whole. And of course, we get this little bit of manufactured tension that, did the Mando die because he was eaten by the crate dragon? And as the crate dragon pops out of the ground, we get another callback to the first episode of season 1, or first chapter of season 1, where he shocked that one creature that was biting onto the leg of the Razor Crest with the end of his rifle, where he shocks the inside of the crate dragon, so the crate dragon will spit him up, and he comes flying out of the crate dragon on his jetpack, turns around, hits the detonator, and blows crate guts all over the damn place. So with the crate dragon dead, the Tusken Raiders start grabbing all of the meat and everything and harvesting all the parts. That was also part of the deal. We didn't mention that they wanted to keep the carcass and its ichor. And I'm assuming the ichor in this case is the pearl.
The blood. The ichor usually refers to blood, like tainted blood especially.
Interesting. I did not know that. But we do get a crate pearl. So when it blows it up, I'm celebrating like, yay, he killed the crate dragon. And then I see the pearl and I go, no, it was a mommy.
Which is an understandable mistake.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it looks like an egg. And if you didn't realize that crate dragons are kind of like chickens and they have a gizzard that they need to get some stones in to help digest food, you might not realize that after enough time being in there, those stones eventually get polished up and they look like pearls, and people place a lot of value on them. In fact, even in some of the old legend stories, some of the smaller crate dragons, they would have pearls that Jedi might even use in place of kyber crystals to use for their lightsabers.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
Pearlescent lightsaber.
Yeah. So the Mando gets the armor back from Cobb. The deal has been completed, and he goes
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by that. I almost thought they were going to go through with the trope of like Mando realizing, oh, this guy ain't that bad, you can keep it, but they didn't do it, so that was a little disappointing.
Yeah, but I think the creed is too strong, though. Like, if he's not willing to take off his own helmet because the creed means that much to him, I think that same stands for the armor in this case, where
or at the very
of how he
least,
felt.
it helps to set up further tension with who we'll see here in a minute.
Yeah. So they both go on their merry way. He gets on the speeder to probably head back to Mos Eisley to get back on the Razor Crest and look for some more Mandalorians. And we get the confirmation we have all been waiting for. Boba freaking Fett is there. Tamara Morrison playing Boba Fett outside of the armor. I like that he's bald in this scene. He's kind of got scars, so we know that he's been through some stuff. The armor itself, if we didn't cover it yet in this review, looks pretty damaged too. So like he's been through some stuff, and so I'm curious to find out later how he lost the armor, and how he got all those scars and stuff. But I like that he's bald because it makes him look a lot like the clone troopers in Clone Wars. So, because one thing I didn't care for in Clone Wars when they show Boba as a kid is he's kind of got the same long hair he had in the Clone Wars movie, Attack of the Clones, the Attack of the Clones movie. And so I like that now he looks a lot more like the clones did in Clone Wars. They have that kind of bald look. Some of them did have hair, but they all kind of have that bald military kind of look. And so, but we get our confirmation, guys. Was it Boba Fett that was at the body of Fennec Shand in that episode? Maybe, maybe not. But at the very least, we know that Boba Fett is alive.
Maybe. We're not 100%. They practically spell that out for us, but they don't literally say, here's a giant neon sign saying this is Boba Fett.
They did because in the credits on IMDb, it's listed as Boba Fett.
Okay, I wouldn't trust IMDb credits.
Okay, that's fair.
That is fair.
Unless it's like, credits at the end of the episode on Disney Plus, those are what I would trust.
Yeah.
Because going into the season, when it was rumored that this actor was going to reappear, a lot of people assumed it was either going to be an adult Boba Fett or it could have been any of the clones, probably like Rex, because Rex was a big character in Dave Filoni's Clone Wars and Rebels show.
This is true.
But yes, more than likely it's probably Boba Fett. Boba Fett.
Yeah. I would say definitely 99.99999%, because it would be very, very disappointing to everyone to tease Boba Fett in the first season, see his armor in the first episode of the second season, and then end that episode with Tamara Morrison, who is essentially Boba Fett in this case, after seeing Attack of the Clones and Clone Wars. And for it not to be Boba Fett, I would be very disappointed. I don't think I'd be so disappointed that I wouldn't continue watching the show, because I think it's still going to be great. And at this point, I think we should have enough trust and faith in Favreau and Filoni to see this thing through. But it would still be pretty disappointing. I would like to see Boba Fett is one of my favorites. I mean, I'm wearing a zip up hoodie here of Boba Fett right now. So I would be a little disappointed, but we'll see. I trust them, but I do think that this is him. And the episode ends
so in a couple
of
weeks, we'll be back, and it'll just be Nathan and I. See you, Robert. You'll be gone.
So that's how the episode ends, with the reveal of Tamara Morrison as mysterious character, most likely Boba Fett, walking towards and past the camera, and the episode ends there. So overall thoughts, guys. What did you think of this episode?
overall, I'm astounded how beautiful this episode was. Like, it just was visually as good as, if not better than, the entirety of season one. I mean, just all the directors came to clutch with this show and just made it so spectacular. And this episode just seems, I'm so looking forward to the rest of the season because if this is how they started off, I can't imagine it being any worse than this. So
I don't know. The curve could go either way.
you're right. You're right.
It did do that a lot in season one. Season one was great, but it also wasn't perfect. Episode one was amazing. And then 2 kind of dropped down just a little bit. And then 3 picked up again. And then 4 and 5 started. 4 came down a little bit. And then 5 came up. And so there is it's not a roller coaster per se, but it's certainly not, a perfect incline the entire time. It does tend to kind of come in a little bit of we'll call it a sinusoidal wave type of thing here. But I agree with Nathan. This episode was gorgeous. All of the shots here were amazing. The landscapes as the Mando was taking the speeder pike across the Dune Sea and everything, trying to reach Freetown is just incredible. All the characters were great. The acting was fantastic. The casting of Timothy Oliphant as Cobb Vanth was spot on. When someone is so good at that kind of role, they do it the best. And so I loved him in this role. And I don't think in the entire thing yet, we've mentioned the music. The music is something that I loved in season 1. And the music here is like similar enough to remind you of some of the same beats. The Mando theme song is there, the whole da 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 da. That all that stuff is there, but there's so much more depth now, and they're changed. He's Ludwig, what's his last name? Göransson.
Yeah.
Is changing it up just a little bit to where it kind of feels a little more fresh but familiar. And it just I watched this episode like 5 times, guys. That's how much I loved it. And like on the 3rd and 4th playthrough, like I was just listening to the music, and it's just fantastic. I don't think there's anything about this episode that I don't like. I thought it was fantastic.
If I had any kind of, the only little thing that felt a little weird, given how much importance the child is to the series, they didn't really do much with it this episode. Like, it showed up at in the fight scene at the beginning. We get the cool little shot of it closing up its cradle and everything. But other than that, the rest of the episode is just kind of like, all right, cut to reaction shot of the child, and then cut back to the actual like plot that's happening.
Yeah.
The only other cool little moment, and probably will be gifable for most of the internet, is after the crate dragon comes to town, we then cut to his, again, reaction shot, and you just see him popping out of a little like a spittoon type can type thing, and he's just like, and I'm waiting for Disney to, do the inevitable, like, what is that they do? Like a little lucky cat that does that when you put the coin in and it comes out and takes the coin. One of those, like I could see a child version of that.
Anything involving the child is a moneymaker for Disney at this point. One thing I do want to point out, though, not counter to what you're saying, but they do make a point every time they show the child to show that the child is paying attention to what is going on around him. And I think that's going to play into this later on, because if you recall, he's watching the Mando in season 1, and the Mando's being kind of violent. And we do get a moment where Cara Dune and the Mando are arm wrestling, and the child starts to force choke Cara. And so I wonder if we're going to get something like more development of that in this season, where, the first episode didn't feature a lot of the child necessarily doing things, but they did make a point to show the child, and that the child was observing his environment very closely, and seeing just more violence happening, but also seeing how these people came together. I'm curious if one of the story threads here with the child is going to be this fight between light and dark with the child. How can I be good and help people? But then the Mando is also super violent, because at this point, the Mando's like his dad, and will the child struggle with that?
For sure, we know that the child is not dumb. It may not be able to, verbally communicate other than, goo-goos and gagas, whatever. but like the fact that it, will close its own cradle once it sees, oh, fight's coming on. So we know it's an intelligent thing. It catches on.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap up this mini review. That might not be so mini at all. I haven't been keeping track of the clock, but that's fine. We're having a ton of fun talking about this episode. And if you love the episode, you probably are just sitting there thinking, yeah, I love that too. I love that too. Let us speculate responsibly. Is there anything in this episode that you guys noticed that you think is going to come back later? We did touch on some of these, like Nathan saying that maybe Cobb Vanth was lying, and that might come back. And I mentioned something else there about maybe that deal between the Tuskens and the Freetown villagers will fall apart. So is there anything else?
Given that it's only, 8 episode seasons, I don't think we're going to see anything in particular with this town again.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see something with this person who might be Boba Fett.
So
other than that, yeah, I don't know.
So other than those things that we had mentioned, is there anything that you guys saw in this episode, or do you think that might be a direction the show's going to go in, or what do you hope to see next in chapter 10?
I think I do think that the character at the end, the bald guy, is going to end up being Boba Fett, or at least someone who knows of Boba Fett and wants that armor for himself, and doesn't want it returned for anything like that. So I think that's what the direction is going to be, is that the Mandalorian is going to be hunted by this Boba Fett impersonator or person, and have to.
It's Jodo Cast.
Jodo Cast.
Remember from Legends canon? There was a person who would impersonate Boba Fett, Jodo Cast.
I don't. Sorry,
Nathan. You disappoint.
That's
or
fair.
Maybe I'm mispronouncing his name. Who knows? It's a Star Wars.
So let me get this straight. First, he doesn't know that battle droids are droids, and now he doesn't know who Jodo Cast is. I mean, I don't know who Jodo Cast is either, but in his defense.
I know that's
but
why he
still,
would always
Nathan,
that's why he would also always impersonate Boba Fett.
But Nathan, did you know that battle droids are droids? Okay, fine. I'll be nice. James, anything? What do you think is going to happen next, or you hope to see in chapter 10?
More Mando, more child.
I hope to see some kind of confrontation between Boba and Mando about what it means to actually be a Mandalorian. Because in theory, Jango wasn't a Mandalorian himself. I don't recall the circumstances about how he got his Beskar armor, but I know that I've heard that he is not actually a Mandalorian by birth, and we know that neither is Mando, but there have been circumstances surrounding how he became a Mandalorian. So I hope to see some kind of conflict there, again challenging this creed of the Mando, keeping the helmet and the secrecy behind their clan and everything, just challenging that, Boba coming in and kind of wrecking the game there for Mando. And I want to see some badassery from Boba Fett. I want to see him kind of almost own Mando a little bit without the armor, because Boba Fett has been painted as this amazing bounty hunter. And as we referenced earlier, he gets cheap shotted in the back by Han and falls into a Sarlacc pit, and probably like the lamest takeout ever. So, I'm hoping to see some Boba Fett redemption in that sense, where he gets to prove just how formidable he is with or without the armor. That's what I'm hoping we'll see in chapter 2, if it not chapter 10, if not another chapter very soon.
I don't know. I would like to think that they're not going to go immediately to the, all right, next episode, here's Boba Fett. Well, it'll probably be a few episodes. I don't see them waiting for the finale.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can see them giving it some time.
Yeah.
I hope they don't do the trope of like, all right, end of every episode, here's Boba Fett following them from a distance.
That would get annoying.
Yeah, that would. No, I agree. It may not be in the next chapter, but probably a few chapters afterwards. Either way, as long as I get that, I think I'll be happy.
Honestly, given the way that things go, if you go back and look at the 2 or 3 trailers that we had prior to the season, a lot of what we saw in this episode was just in those trailers was just from the first few minutes in the Gamorrean fight scene. So I imagine next episode is probably gonna, bring us back to Navarro and Grief Karga and Cara Dune. And we might even see them do what a lot of people assume is going to be a prison break to get Horatio Sands' blue alien guy back. So we're probably going to, if I were a betting man, I would say that will be the next episode. That way the trailer would just consist of those 2 episodes and leave plenty of surprises for the remaining 6.
Yeah, I was surprised how much of this episode was in the trailer. So that does make sense, that the trailer would just basically be those first 2 episodes. So I agree with you there, James. So that wraps up our mini, maybe not so mini review of The Mandalorian Season 2, Chapter 9. Thank the Force that Season 2 is here. It's been exciting. Like we covered at the beginning, every week following the release of each chapter, we will drop these reviews on Sunday. So come back and check in with us next week for our thoughts on Chapter 10 and each week after for our thoughts on the following chapters. Take care, guys. This is the way.
This is the way.
Be good to each other out there.